joining us now, Congressman, 3rd District, North Carolina, Walter Jones. Congressman, good to have you.
Well, John, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, and as we say every time we are on, the world is still upside down, but maybe we can right the world with the help of God.
Well, no question there. We're going to need divine intervention. Hey, here's the good news. Karen Handel winning last night in Georgia. Yep. You're going to have a chance to meet her in a couple weeks when she gets up there. Very nice lady. She's been around for a while. Get this. Do you know that little Johnny Ossoff, who never really had a job, 29 years old, you know that they spent $260 per vote in the 6th District in Georgia, and they underperformed Hillary Clinton in 2016. $260, Congressman, per vote, and they were below Clinton. What do you think?
I'm delighted with the victory by the Republican, and I would tell you that one of the things that has nothing to do with that race, because I'm glad the Republicans won it, but this is a prime example of what is wrong with the electoral process. The money, $50 million in that race. Where in the world is it going? When is it going to end? Because this is what is driving this place too many times. Both parties just raise money. Outside money comes in, whether it be for the left or the right, and there's no sunshine. It's all dark. But that's my opinion.
I tell you what.
But I'm glad she won. Let's end on something positive.
Well, that is a Congressman. I mean, $30 million they spent on this race. And even, this is the thing, even if they won this thing, they were going to basically rent the seat for 18 months because they were never going to be able to hold it in 2018. Yeah. This is a very conservative district. I lived there for 2 decades. So the whole thing was, like you say, the whole thing is asinine. All right. So, Congressman, since we talked last, so I was in the press briefing yesterday. I wanted to ask 2 questions. I got one in. I couldn't get the second one in. And my second question was going to, and I'm going to try it again Thursday. Let me tell you what my question is. Okay. Sean, let me ask you this. The president campaigned vigorously on getting us out of these Middle Eastern wars. Yet 3 days ago, you shoot a Syrian plane out of the sky. Can't figure that one out. Now you're shooting down their drones in their own airspace. You send 4,000 troops to Afghanistan. Nobody knows what either of these objectives are, yet the president campaigned to get out of these wars, yet we're getting in them. Number one, what's the plan here? And B, why don't we have an AUMF that goes back 3 administrations? Can you help us understand that?
Well, I hope you get a chance to ask that question, because I really think it would be a question that many, many Americans would say, and thank John Fredericks for asking that question. Nobody knows. That's the problem. No one knows.
Well, I'm gonna hopefully get this opportunity before the end of the week, if I get called on there, if he ever comes back. But I want to get to Syria, Congressman. I mean, this is unbelievable. So no one even knows why we're in Syria. No one knows who the enemy is. Yet we shoot down a Syrian warplane over their own country. And that's supposed to be okay, like just the normal course of doing business. Now we shoot down one of their drones. I mean, why are we shooting planes out of the sky?
Well, John, you and I both know, you're a very learned man, that if we had one of our planes here in America flying over Virginia or North Carolina and a Syrian plane shot it down, we would be outraged and we would call it an act of war.
Right.
But when we do it, this is where, again, America gets itself in trouble with doing these things without action by the Congress. And what it does is continue to alienate people that don't like us to begin with, and this continues to accentuate that hatred. Mm-hmm. It's wrong. And that's why, again, I've said, did I mention the book, Funding the Enemy, to you last time we talked?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to call Douglas Wilson. I have not done that yet, but I'm going to do that right when we hang up and get him to call me back and ask him to contact you, and you get him on your show.
Well, I mean, look, put yourself in the place right now of the Russian Federation. So Syria is an ally of theirs. They've been an ally.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've gone over this on my show since 2012. It's anybody who listen to me right now, this old news. They're an ally of Syria. That's their only warm water port they have. They've been allies since before the Second World War. So we get that. So Russians say, well, look, if you're going to shoot down planes of our allies, what do you expect us to do? Stand around? I mean, obviously, we're going to have to retaliate if this continues on. And it's like our response is, too bad. Why are we shooting planes down? Why are we even there in the first place? And now we're shooting planes down, and now we're risking further conflict with the Russian Federation, and there is no plan as to what our involvement is there and why, and we're shooting planes down. It's to me, I don't know why Paul Ryan should be going crazy saying you have got to come to Congress and you have got to tell us, even if it's in private, even if it's not for public consumption, if it's under wraps, you've got to tell us what this plan is here, and you have got to get authorization from this body before we can just shoot planes out of the sky.
John, what I've said on your show is that we have a constitutional responsibility, and yet we have no way to force the leadership, which is Paul Ryan, to move a bill of an AUMF. Many of my colleagues in both parties have been saying the same thing that you're saying, that it is outrageous, whether it be a Republican in the White House or a Democrat in the White House. You should not bypass the American people. You bypass the American people because you bypass their elected representatives. And that, in my opinion, borders on some very serious legal questions. And I am having a meeting tomorrow with the Congressional Research Service. I want to know what I can do legally to force something to happen. And I think I've got a couple of options, but I want to verify with the Congressional Research Service before I move on these options, because this is getting out of control. I will read to you. I'm going to do a speech on the floor tomorrow with funding the enemy, talking about Afghanistan, and I'll read you very quickly comments that Mr. Trump, before he became candidate Trump, was making out in the public, and it should take 2 minutes. This is Donald Trump, not President Trump, but Donald Trump, said that the United States was wasting lives and money in Iraq and Afghanistan. Another quote, the next year he called for the war a complete waste, and in 2013 he, and I quote, do not allow our very stupid leaders to sign a deal that keeps us in Afghanistan through 2024. I mean, it just, I'm like you. I hope you get a chance to ask that question at the press conference, because Mr. Trump was very outspoken against these wars around the world, and now he has become complicit. And I don't understand it myself.
I don't understand it. It's very disturbing. He's got to reconcile that to his voters. They pride themselves on following through on their promises. This is one. And, to throw your arms up and say, well, I'm turning it over to General Mattis. Look, General Mattis didn't get elected president. You got elected president, and you're the one that put General Mattis in that job. So, look, I like General Mattis. I like all the generals. We all love the generals. That's got nothing to do with this. Why are we there? What are we doing? And how do you reconcile the fact that it's the exact opposite of what you said before you were a candidate, when you were a candidate in the primaries, and certainly during the fall campaign? You said the same thing. Now we're getting the exact opposite. All right, Congressman, I'm going to look forward to your speech. When is it? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I have 10. A poster that I will carry on the floor and put beside me as I speak of the cover, and it's got a mask on this individual. You only see the eyes, and it says, funding the enemy, and the subtitle is how U.S. taxpayers bankroll the Taliban. And I just really am outraged to the point where you're outraged, and hopefully many of your listeners, and I appreciate you trying to help us with 1664, the bill that we put in. If I have just a moment, last Monday, I talked to a General Mark Hertling, who I heard at 7:15 on Friday morning driving back to North Carolina from D.C., and he was on CNN, and he made the statement that Congress should be debating whether we increase the number of troops or not. He said, I have a lot of respect for General Mattis, he said, but he does not have the authority, and the president can't give him the authority to increase these numbers of troops. And I called and talked to him this past Monday, and he said, Congressman, I'll help you. He said, I've looked at your bill. I don't like parts of it, but parts of it I do. He said, but I agree with you. You've got to have a debate. And so what you're doing by having these conversations, I hope you will encourage your other members that are on your show from Virginia to get behind this bill. I always say you can join us in getting the bill to the floor, and then you can vote against it. I've done that many times just to get a debate.
Let's just have the debate. Let's just have the debate. It's like I got a text here from one of my listeners who says, well, the U.S. forces shot the Syrian plane down in Syria because it was a bomber and it was getting close to rebels who we were backing. I don't know what the hell the rebels were. What rebels are we backing? No one even knows what side they're on. That's the point. No one even has any idea who's fighting who, and yet we're in there shooting planes down. I mean, it's incredible to me how we're involved in this, and nobody's saying anything about it. You know, here's the problem, Congressman Jones. We're so callous to this now. We have been in these wars, Congressman, for so long.
Yep.
They go on and on and on. We're callous to it. Like,
that's right.
Nobody even thinks about it. We shoot planes down. We send troops in. Our kids come home in body bags. We get Afghan Taliban people, infiltrate Afghan security, shoot our troops. It's on page 19. We become desensitized and callous to this. I mean, I remember when Clinton sent planes in to Bosnia. Remember that? Remember the huge debate we had? And would there be troops? And would we lose any people? I mean, it was a raging debate. Now, retrospect, it looks like President Clinton probably did the right thing in the right way. But it was a raging debate. Now, we have people die, kids get killed, whatever, blow up planes. Nobody says anything. Country is so war weary, they've tuned it out. That's a problem.
Right. John, that is why, again, I wanted to thank you for being so outspoken, because I met yesterday with a defense priorities group, and I might try to get you to get one of these people on. They agree with us. I had 2 retired generals, 1 Army, 1 Air Force, and then there were 3 other people in the meeting. We are doing everything we can. I know you are trying to wake up the American people to get involved. If we put the draft back in, I guarantee you they'd be involved.
You got that right.
What we ought to do is put a bill in to introduce the draft again.
Yep, that solves it right there. Put in a bill to introduce the draft. If you want to go to war, let's have a draft. Nobody's exempt. Not my son, not your son, not Barron Trump. Nobody's exempt. Let's have a draft, and then let's have a war tax, right? You got to pay for the war. Let's have a tax. So if you want to vote for a war, and you want to vote for the draft, and you want to vote for a tax increase to pay for the war, and everybody's fine with that, I'm all in. But that's not the way we're doing it. It's all under the radar screen. And these defense contractors, look, they make billions of dollars off it. You put 4,000 troops in Afghanistan, Congressman Jones, somebody's got to feed them. Somebody's got to supply them. Somebody's got to build the equipment for them. Contracts, money, and body bags. That's the problem here. And nobody seems to care. It's driving me nuts.
Well, it does me too, John. And I tell you the truth, I get very, very frustrated with the indifference to young men and women dying for this country. And
unbelievable.
That's why you were important to this effort, and many other people are as well. We just got to keep beating this drum and raising hell. That's what it's all about.
You got to raise hell, because I'm telling you, the problem is after 17 years of war, it's become like part of what we do.
That's right.
We've got teenagers now that they were born during the wars. It's like what we do. We're in perpetual war. It's no big deal. You get this terrible thing with Otto Warminger It's just horrible what North Korea did, and everybody's sensitive to that. It's just terrible ordeal what his parents went through, and the poor young man, horrible, all over the news. But we get Americans shot in Afghanistan. They come home on an airplane. It isn't even in the paper. No one knows about it.
No,
it's not even
anymore.
Nothing. Zero. Because we're desensitized.
That's right.
I'm telling you, you got to keep fighting.
Well, I'm going to
get out.
Whistling this morning and ask him to call you, and I want you to get him on the show because he was embedded for almost 2 years with our military about 7, 8 years ago when he wrote this book, and he talked about the waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's worse today than it was 6 years ago.
All right, Congressman Walter Jones, always good to have you. You always get me fired up,
my friend.
When you come on. We got to keep fighting this battle.
I'm in your army. We're going to bring war to an end.
We got to do it, and we got to hold these people accountable, and I am going to ask that question, if not the next day, Friday or next week, and I want them to give me an answer, and I want Sean Spicer to tell me how the president reconciles this broken promise to his followers.
Yep.
Where did we go from get out of these Middle Eastern wars to shooting planes down and increasing troops? I don't know how he got there. I got to figure this out. Sir, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us, Congressman Walter Jones. All right, go to walterjones.house.gov. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Yeah, let's have a draft. How do you think that'd go over?